can talk to, some of them you can't.
Right. And you know what, man? You mentioned your history a few times. Let's start at the beginning. You're originally from Peru, and you were raised in Harlem. Talk to me about those two places. Introduce my listeners, my supporters, to those situations, and then we'll move forward.
Okay. So, in Peru, you have to understand, for people that, I've always been able to have such honest conversations with individuals because I'll go to any place and I'll just tell them, well, they ask me what this is about. So I'll be in a neighborhood that's totally Mexican on the West Coast, and I'll ask them, what's Harlem like? You know, what was it like growing up with just nothing but black people around you all the time? And I'll be really honest with them. And then I go to a place in Harlem, I go someplace in Louisiana or down south in Atlanta, and I'll be like, kids, ask me anything that you normally wouldn't ask. And the kids will be like, yo, how come Latino people, some of them are so racist? And I'll tell them the exact answer because this is the only way we can have progress in the community, to be honest with ourselves. So as an indigenous person from Peru, I have a little bit of African ancestry in me. Mm-hmm. And, you know, some of the members of my mom's family look super, they have those features. And what people don't understand is that Latin Americans invented the racial tier system, people. For y'all that are listening to H-Rap show, this is how bad it is. They invented a racial tier system in which what they called criollos, right? So these were people who were white Europeans who were born here. They were the top tier of the society. But above them were what people call peninsulares, which were white people from Europe who were actually born in Europe. Then they had all these subcategories of people that were not considered 100% human beings. So when we get to Dred Scott, we're already 400 years behind what the Spanish and the Portuguese have been doing. Mm-hmm. Right? So they invented these racial structures. People call mestizo, right, which is a combination of an indigenous person and a white person. Then they would have what they call a mulatto, right? So that's a racist term because the mulatto was meant to symbolize the horse, right, mm-hmm. and a donkey combining, and its union being a mule, an animal that's born sterile. Therefore, the word being mula, which is the Latin word for mule, and then mulatto being the translation that comes up. And then there was morisco, and then they had a series of other ones which ascribed to people from an Asian society. So that's why when a black person who's super dark will go to a certain country, they'll feel like they're being discriminated on even more so. But what they realize is when they go there, the people who would normally be quote-unquote black in American society, like a light-skinned black person, has benefited from the racial tier system in Latin America. So therefore, they've always felt not no race, but like it's like getting punched in the face with the headgear from the Olympics. You're mm-hmm. taking less of a hit in certain times, in certain places, because this racial tier system has allowed some people to say, well, I'm not black. So therefore, in a Dominican's mind, or Puerto Rican, some people, when they come here, or even in Central America, South America, let's not count those people out and single out one nationality, right? No, because at the end of the day, there is something, you can't listen to only one side of conservative or liberal activists when they say, oh, you know, well, black people can't be racist. Well, absolutely they can. It's called colorism. How Europeans maintain that. That's why there are Latino, quote-unquote Latino people who are black and they can't identify with it. Well, they have indigenous roots and they're Native American, but they don't see that and they refuse to see that because they're not proud of it, because they've been taught that that's the lowest on the tier, that that's the worst thing you can be. And I'm here to tell people that that's a lie. And you were taught a lie. And you were taught a fundamental principle of self-devaluation. And whatever I can do to break that, whatever I can angle in the music and the art that I make to show people how that's a clever disguise, and how it enables the people to not see who the real villain in the society is, and who's really pulling the strings, then that's just my job, brother. And hey, if I can do it the right way, I'll do it the right way. If I gotta do it by bending the rules, then we gonna bend the rules, man. We gonna get to where we gonna get to.
And you know what? To me, there's no such thing as bending the rules when you fight evil, because you fight evil. The rules are already bent. what you're doing is straighten out the rules when you do that, if you ask me personally. Now, as you stated, like with this tier system or this caste system, as they call it in India, you said you got darker people in your family. How does that work in the family situation? Is it a lot of tension there, or what's going on?
Well, I think it varies because, for example, some people have different experiences when they come to this country. So when I first came here, obviously when people see me, the first thing they see is an indigenous person. They say, oh man, they look like he could be Cuban, Puerto Rican, Dominican, but they always say East Coast, right? I could fit in with West Coast Latinos, not a problem because I do have an indigenous vibe, but I think for me, what I thought was interesting is that the way I saw Black Americans discriminated in this country, and they always told, man, you're a citizen, everything's great, but you feel like a second-class citizen because there's no benefit of the doubt ascribed to you, you're automatically criminalized, and that's exactly how indigenous people feel in some of their own countries back home, right? The standard of beauty, so similar, brother, and I think these are the correlations that give us real depth to understanding our cultures. Like if I go back to Peru and you go to the airport, right? Mm-hmm. And you're driving back from the airport to Lima, you'll see all these signs for beauty, right? And beauty products and makeup. And everybody on the sign, all the models are white Europeans. This is like 5-6 years ago. It's changed a little bit. But you know what, brother? When I went to Africa, it was the same thing. They had back on the airport, you got these big Chanel signs. There's an occasional African person now, but man, for so many years, and people can't deny it, during the 80s and 90s and the 2000s, I used to go to these places. I was touring heavily around the world. That's what I would see. That's one other important part of it all. Controlling the standard of beauty, controlling what the narrative of beauty is. Who's to say what beauty is? Who's to say that you've decided that we're ugly now and we have no value in ourselves? And that's part of us trying to act like you. And I think that, I've never ascribed to the idea that just being from a certain race gives a person a devilish nature. I think that takes away responsibility from the philosophical aspects of what they ascribe to. If you out here and you're doing wrong, you have to own that. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh man, these people they come from a wicked society. Yes, absolutely. That's what European society was based on back then, because these people were lying to themselves. Now, brother, you could tell them right now, say, hey, next time you get to arguing with one of these racists that wanna recreate the past, to ask them honestly, say, hey, brother, what was the punishment in medieval Europe, or in medieval England or medieval Spain for murder or for raping a woman? You know what it was? It was murder. You got hung. You got your entrails ripped out. If you raped a woman, they would castrate you, or they would gouge you. That which is different. Those are with the hot pincers that they leave in the cold, just so you get cauterized and they turn you into a eunuch. I was like, so you came to America not looking for religious freedom. You came here because it was harder to enforce laws across a big swath of land, and you could get away with doing terrible things to people. So when you look at that, you have to remember to tell them, what's the correlation to our society? Why would you bring up that? Why is it important? You can tell them, well, we're about to have Columbus Day, brother. And what's the first thing Columbus did when he got here? He took over an island and he started prostituting little girls. Does that sound familiar to anybody in our society now? Isn't that what Mr. Epstein was doing? Isn't that what these sickos be doing? You want to talk about a satanic agenda. Don't ascribe it to people that want free health care. All right? That's just what we deserve for the government legalizing corporations being able to sell us poison. What we really want is an independent society where we can control the parameters of what we decide our people need to be fed. The healthiest thing we need to learn. What kind of learning system are we going to develop for young Black and indigenous people? How do we confront a society in which, white Americans that are mostly from a conservative leaning side have decided they don't like to be called racist no more? So they want to change what racism means. It doesn't mean that you can yell the N-word, but you can't be racist. So, okay, so you're caught killing someone on camera, yelling the N-word. And, I hear the audacity of these people. And they're a microcosm of the nation, brother. Like, I heard a story about, and I'm going to leave it at this. I heard a story about these freak shows that were down south, and I think it was Macon, Georgia, and they pulled out two shotguns, and somebody had an AR in the car, and it was at a little black kid's 4th birthday, and they were getting out the car, and they were pointing guns to people and yelling racial slurs, and they were flying these big Confederate flags. And these people got arrested. They went to jail. And they were crying in court. They said, this is not who we are. And I said to myself, but no, that's exactly who you are. And that's the problem. That you ain't gonna learn nothing in jail but surviving and getting the fuck out and being a worse person.
Exactly.
You still haven't faced the fact that no, that's who you are, because that's who this country is, bro. That's who this country still is. They still doing it. It's like the facade of things.
You know what? Since you said that, and how I'm gonna ask you this. You know, you may not have an answer, but I definitely want to work on this. How do we start to bridge the gap? Like, there's so many people whose eyes are closed, and I don't even know if they're purposely closing their eyes, but they're just closed. How do we take like-minded individuals with positive agendas and link them with other people throughout the diaspora, throughout and especially the hemisphere? Because what people don't realize, 45% of the Africans that were captured and enslaved went to Brazil, not to what we call the United States of America. How do we bridge that gap between Peruvian, Brazilians, Guyanians, Central Americans, Caribbeans, and Americans, or North Americans?
Well, I mean, I think that in a lot of these cases, these people have failed to realize that the country that we're living in right now is a settler colonial state. Now, what does that mean? That means that it started out as a settlement, and it turned into a colony, and it turned into a small republic. Then it began expansionism for many reasons that it'll say and it'll try and justify. But it is no different than the caliphate when it started. It is no different than Rome. It is no different than any other empire. It is an empire. We have possessions, right? To understand this, we need to understand that we can never stop. A revolution is a complete cycle. But once the cycle is completed, the ball don't stop rolling, right? Even if you decide, even if we get a platform, and this, I'm not trying to change the subject and change the
No, keep going.
But I'm saying, even if we do get to the platform, prepare for the counterattack immediately, right? The activists that were in Ferguson, when I was there, and I happened to be a guest of the activists and the people that were there, they were very, very, very open about their struggle and saying, hey man, there's people coming after us, you know, motherfuckers getting. And sure, there's some stuff that they claimed that was exaggerated in the media. Okay, well that didn't happen, but this did happen, or this person was followed constantly, or this person's car, you know, had no brakes all of a sudden. I'm just like, okay, cool. So just remember that, you know, the idea that the Romans had, that politics is an extension of war by another means, is still 100% true. So I think that if you put yourself in that mentality and say, hey, you know, we're in a fight for our lives here, and we stand a better chance learning from one another's struggle and becoming more conscientious of that. And that way, you know, it's just about showing people a tiny bit more respect and realizing, hey, if I have a bad interaction with one of these people, or I feel negatively about it, that shouldn't make me throw this whole thing away, because that's how these motherfuckers got this continent in the first place. Right? What did a Buffalo Soldier get the people that were here? Nothing. The honor to die in some other empire war, right? And then what is being a little good Indian scout get you hang around the forts? Nothing. Right? Nothing. What you get? A fucking casino? Right? You trade what? 70% of your population to a casino? Come on, that's a band-aid, and all Native American people know that. They want reparations too. They need some of that land back that was stolen, and it's even in the contract. So let's not pretend like the written word means anything.
Exactly.
Let's stop thinking that electoralism is the only thing that they can do. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, if you think that voting 25 times every century means that that's democracy, they got you already. Then we need to deprogram. That's another problem, brother. It ain't just learning. We got to deprogram. Yeah, man. A lot of us are the same. Like, I give you an example, brother. I never knew how Panama was created until I read the story of the Panama Canal. See, the Panama and Colombia, and I'm going to leave you with this, that the Panama and Colombia used to be one country, bro. It was called Grand Colombia. And the Americans approached Colombia and said, yo, we want to build a canal here so we can cheat Europe and all these other world powers, Asia, everybody, they want shipping.